dark blue shirt to the graduation.
Well, what was school like for you as a child, and what were your best and worst subjects?
I guess I really don't remember much about first, second, third grade, except I had strep throat or tonsillitis or whatever you call it back in those days. It seemed like I was out of school a lot because I was always sick with sore throat. From there, I went to Pageton when I started living with my aunt and uncle, and really liked that school, although we did walk about 1.5 miles, close to 2 miles. And from there, Gary High School, which was a long way off, and we rode a bus. I would suppose...
Look over here a little bit.
I really liked high school because we went to ball games and did things like that nature. Yeah, I would say high school was my best project. And also I liked history, did not like English, and did not care much for math.
Or spelling.
Or spelling. As my mother would
Did you
say.
as your wife would say, what school activities and sports did you participate in?
I was not sports inclined, so I did not do any sports.
How about fads from your youth? What were the popular hairstyles and the clothing?
Back then, possibly a duck's tail haircut, which is your hair was pulled way back
Duck's ass.
into a duck's ass, and the penny loafers with dungarees. That would seem to be the fad then.
Dungarees are like jeans.
Yeah.
Jeans, yeah.
You are.
We didn't call them jeans. They were dungarees.
Overall.
Overalls.
Or did they have the overalls? Okay.
No, I didn't wear I did those coveralls when I was in first, second grade, but thereafter it was.
How long would a pair of shoes last you?
You only got one pair of shoes a year because it was during the wartime.
Mm-hmm.
I was very hard on shoes, and so May and Bill, which my aunt and uncle, would always have to divvy up their stamps for my shoes because I would go through it at least 2 or 3 pair a year.
Where did you get your shoes from? Was there a local store?
At a local grocery store.
At a grocery store?
At a grocery store.
Okay. Mom?
Did you have any childhood heroes?
Westerns were, I guess you might say, my heroes: Gene Autry, Roy Rogers. Let's see. Those were my 2 favorites. I was a Western fan back then.
What about music? Songs and music?
Western music.
Western? Country
Yeah.
Western?
Country Western music, yeah.
Like
how
who?
about, how about pets? If so, what kind and when? What were their names?
I always had a pet from the day I can remember, which was 4 or 5 years old probably. I always had a pet. My grandfather, being a veterinarian, a lot of people would bring their pets to have him work on them, give them shots or whatever. And a lot of times they would wind up leaving them there because they didn't want to pay for them or didn't have enough money to pay for them. And I would wind up having 2 or 3 pets around.
What about your religion growing up? What church, if any, did you attend?
Okay, when I was very young, I went to church with my mother and grandmother at, let's see, what church would that have been? Church of God in War. Then my grandfather and I would go to church on Sunday afternoon or Sunday night at his church, which was the Baptist church. Then when I left and went to live with my aunt and uncle, I joined the Methodist church.
Okay, who were your friends friends when you were growing up?
Didn't have a lot of close friends. I had James Wyatt, who and I really played good together. Jim Davis, who was really my best friend. Jack Davis was his brother. We all used to roam the mountains together, and we had a lot of fun that way.
What world events had the most impact on you when you were growing up, and did any of them personally affect your family? Yes.
I guess one of the impacts as I was still in school is when an uncle of mine got killed in service. His name was Paul Daniel Harmon. When they shipped his body back, I had wished that he'd been buried at a national cemetery, but he's buried in a local cemetery, and which is now really in non-existence.
I believe this is World War II you're talking about?
That's correct.
That was one of the most important events of your young years?
Yes, I would think so.
All right, here's a good question for you. Describe a typical family dinner, and did you all eat together as a family? Who did the cooking, and what was your favorite food?
When I was still living with my mother and Howard, or with my grandma and grandpa, I would say my grandmother was the best cook in the world. And most every Sunday, I don't know how she did it, because my grandpa didn't really have a full-time employment, but she was able to feed 10 or 12 people every Sunday. Like I say, she was a very, very good cook.
What did she cook?
I don't remember. I know we had chicken a lot,
Chicken?
and chicken and dumplings a lot, and a beef roast a lot.
Did that all come
Now,
from
in
local?
wintertime, we always had ham because my grandfather raised pigs, and we'd kill the pigs.
Did you kill the pigs?
I never killed a pig, no.
No?
But I've watched many a person do it, and watched them scald them, hang them up, skin them, and cut them up.
Well, let's change the subject.
Okay.
Who was the oldest relative you remember as a child? And what do you remember about them? That was probably your grandfather, wasn't it?
I would say my grandfather. He was probably the oldest one that I can recall, yes.
And what do you know about your family's surname?
Chaffins.
Chaffins, not really much at all. When my mother, well, actually, when my father died, we only lived in Lomax, West Virginia for a very short time till we moved in with my grandmother and grandfather.
How did your father die?
My father was a coal miner.
Mm-hmm.
He had a bad tooth.
Mm-hmm.
Toothache or whatever you want to call it, and he went to have this tooth pulled, and the dentist pulled his tooth. He came home. Now this I'm sort of repeating from memory from what other people said.
Mm-hmm.
He came home, and that night he bled to death. He was a diabetic, which nobody knew.
Did they have antibiotics back then?
I seriously doubt it.
Okay.
This is 1933.
1933.
And antibiotics wouldn't have helped the
Yeah.
bleeding.
No.
All right, let's get to the good part now.
How did you meet my mom?
What is the full name of your spouse?
Diane B. Chaffins.
Well, what was her maiden name?
Diane B.
She doesn't know.
Henry
Walker.
Walker.
Walker. I thought it was Miller.
No, that was my
That was
mother's
That was
name.
your mother's maiden name.
See, he knows so
Diane
much
B.
about-
Walker.
All right, what about your siblings? Well, what was the full name of your spouse? They're talking about me in the past tense. I'm still living here. What was the full name of your spouse? It's Diane. Now they want to know your siblings and your parents. You've covered that.
Covered that.
When and how did you meet me? And what did you do on the dates?
Boy, was it a blind date, and I'm still blind. She had an uncle, or a cousin, rather,
Cousin.
and we were in the military, but he and I, we lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which was on the base there.
Mm-hmm. I've lived there.
You did.
Yeah,
And
you
he lived in base housing, and I lived in the barracks. And he and I worked together. Well, his name was Don. Don invited me over to his house to play cards. And that is where I met your mother. I guess we stuck it off real early because she decided she wanted to chase me until she caught me.
I want to hear this story. I was there because I was visiting them from Pennsylvania.
I think the camera stopped.
No, but no, this one's
Oh,
still
it's still
rolling. This
going?
one's still
I
rolling.
was-
Oh,
Visiting.
anyway, she was visiting. She came up from Pennsylvania to visit her cousin, Don and Nancy.
and who was married to my best friend.
And
my
he was
cousin
married to her
my best
cousin,
friend.
Nancy. And that's how we got started.
And then we kept in touch by U.S. Postal Service.
Mostly,
Wow.
yeah, mostly
letters.
by letters because phones weren't available like they are today.
Well,
But we did call occasionally, and but mostly by letters.
and then a few visits back. Who's telling this story? You or me? You would come to see me, and I came up there a couple of times, and that's how our relationship grew.
Right.
Okay. We still have camera time left, Mark?
ma'am.
Why? Okay, so we got married and lived happily ever after. And when you found out you were going to be a parent for the first time, how did you feel, and why did you choose your child's name, your children's names?
I guess I cried a lot. And still crying. But as far as naming her,
That was my department, wasn't it?
we, Mama,
Julie
Was-
Andrews.
was taken to, we were stationed at Pease Air Force Base. They had no hospital there, so we had to go over to the Portsmouth Naval Yard, and Mama had to go in early because she was having complications, blood pressure, and so on and so forth. And at the middle of the night, I got a call that your wife is getting ready to have a baby. And so I arrived over there, and sure enough, we had a big baby girl, 9 pound,
1 ounce.
no 1 ounce,
By cesarean
by
section.
cesarean section.
Cesarean section.
And Mama was the one that named her Julie, after Julie London or Julie.
Well, I like the name Julie.
She
And-
liked the name Julie.
Yeah.
So she was born in Kittery, Maine, or on a base?
She was born in Kittery, Maine.
Kittery, Maine.
And
Yeah.
Leslie was born in
Air Force Base.
At
Van,
Massachusetts, at
Yeah.
Vandenberg.
Vandenberg.
Yeah.
no, Vandenberg was in California.
And had
Leslie wasn't
no,
born
she was
there.
born in Massachusetts.
She was born in Massachusetts, and Vandenberg was in California.
California.
Yeah. Did I say?
You said Vandenberg.
I'm sorry, I'm goofing up again.
Now, who did you name Leslie after?
I really don't know, Mama.
I like the name. I
What
like
about Ann? Where did you get their middle name
Well,
from?
Anne, because I thought it sounded nice, it went together, but I've since been chided many a time for not being creative about the middle names, like Leslie and Julie both said, why did you name us Anne? Why didn't you think of something a little more creative? So I regret that. I wish it had been Julie Grace after my mother, and with Leslie I probably should have chosen something else too, but
Like what?
I don't know. If I had to do it over, probably maybe another Grace. Because I love the name Grace.
And Grace is named after your
My
Your
mother.
mother.
My mother.
and her name name's Grace Klauser or Grace
Nellie
Miller?
Grace.
Her name was Nellie Grace.
But
she
she
was christened,
changed.
but she changed it to Grace Nellie when she got older. She legally changed it because she hated the word Nellie. So she was Grace N. And she married a Walker, and they were divorced. That's my father, and this is not about me. But then she married a Klauser, so she was Grace N. Klauser for the rest of her life after she remarried Dick.
His name was Dick Klauser.
Dick Klauser.
Or Richard Klauser.
All right, back to you, Dad. What was your profession? We already know that. And how did you choose it? Because there was nothing left to do in West Virginia.
Well, in Virginia, West Virginia, the only profession around was probably a store clerk or work in the coal mines. And I was only 90 pounds.
90 pounds.
90 pounds.
A 90-pound weakling?
A 90-pound weakling. And I figured I would not be able to work in the coal mines. So I decided to join the military. Went down, joined the military, and
Tell this story.
and the doctor who gave us the physical examination says, "Son, are you sure you want to join the military? You only weigh 90 pounds." And I said, "Yes, sir, I sure do." So he let me pass, even though I had bad eyesight and was only 90 pounds. So I joined the military and went to Lackland Air Force Base for training. Went from Lackland Air Force Base to Denver, Colorado to administrative school. Went from Denver down to Cheyenne, Wyoming for a bookkeeping school. Went from there to Tyndall Air Force Base, Florida, and worked a while, about a year or so. Went from there to Korea. Went from Korea to Georgia, Tyndallville, Georgia. Went from Tyndallville, Georgia to London, England.
Mm-hmm.
There was a small base there, and I can't think of the name of it.
How many different, you don't have to name the bases, but how many different cities did you live in when you, just quickly name all the cities that you lived in when you were in the Air Force, and which ones you liked the best and the least?
Oh, good golly, I can't name all the
Just
name of the cities.
Name a few.
I guess Mom and I went to California, and I liked it there, except it got you could be sitting out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the fog bank would roll in. The temperature would drop from 70 to 50s in just no time flat. So that wasn't the best. But I guess my best tour of duty was in England.
Okay. I'm going to skip around here a little.